let's move on to topic number 6 tonight. We just had an amazing voicemail from the Netherlands for F1. We really appreciate that. Thank you for leaving that voicemail from the caller from the Netherlands. But hey, if you're new to this show here, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We are on a mission to hit 1,000 subs here at Comeback Sports, and we need you to hit that subscribe button. So come on, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and keep tuning in here weekly for all this great content we deliver at Comeback Sports. But yeah, let's jump into this F1 content this week. We only have one F1 topic on the show this week. We're just dabbling a little bit in, but don't worry. After the Sochi Grand Prix, I'm sure we will have plenty to talk about. But this week and even last week, Pierre Gasly has given us plenty to talk about, talking about the possible return to that Red Bull seat, or possibly moving on to another team in F1 and just completely separating himself from that Red Bull camp. But there's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of talk over these past few weeks. And then even Pierre Gasly has spoken up himself a few times over these past few weeks. So, Pat, what do you think? First off, the past, and then, the present, and then the future for Pierre Gasly with Red Bull F1.
Yeah, so we've mentioned this before. Gasly, when he was kind of brought up to the big boy team with Red Bull, struggled. He struggled a little bit. I remember, watching on Drive to Survive and Horner trying to kind of, he at first kind of put the baby gloves on and was trying to help him out. And then towards the end, they were like, we got to make another move. And now with the success of Gasly from last season, this season, he's been doing so well. You now wonder, did Red Bull make a mistake? Did they not give him enough time, to really kind of, get used to that seat? I know there's not a lot of time to waste in F1. It's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? But he's been so good, especially considering the car that he's driving in. If he was driving a Red Bull car, would that make a difference? The other thing is Sergio Perez, is their second driver right now. You have a very established driver in that second seat. Now, he hasn't had the greatest of years that I think everybody expected him to, but I believe he's still in 5th place in the standing. So it's not like he's, falling off the map either. So, I think the question is, and I believe Perez is only on a 1-year deal. So I think it's done at the end of this year, from what I understand. So the question I think first is, what's Red Bull going to do? Is Red Bull going to re-sign Perez? Are they going to bring him back? Because that's what they have to decide first. Perez is 31, so he's not old, but he's, 6 or 7 years older than Gasly. So, they have to decide, do we want another young driver next to Verstappen, or do we want more of a seasoned vet? Then after that, if they re-sign Perez, a 2-year deal, then Gasly's definitely going to look elsewhere, because he doesn't want to wait around for that seat to open up. He's going to want to go to another car, another team, because he knows that, he already knows now with his little bit of time in that Red Bull seat, that time is fleeting in F1. So he knows he's not going to be around forever. He's going to want to get into one of those upper echelon cars, and he's not going to wait another 2 or 3 years. So to me, once Red Bull makes a decision on Perez, affects Gasly. And maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe Gasly behind the scenes is talking to Horner, and they're trying to figure this out to get him back in there. I think that's going to be a very interesting part of silly season with F1, as always.
Yeah, I think this is a major part of it, and it's a big deal. And obviously, if I'm Christian Horner, I've got the ball in my court, and I've got a ton of options for my driver lineup in 2023 for people to slot next to Max Verstappen. And if I'm Christian Horner, I'm giggling and laughing happy, because like I said, I've got tons of options and I can pick anybody I want. And I've got a ton of good drivers with obviously Sergio Perez, Pierre Gasly, and now Alex Albon even coming back into the mix. So he's got a ton of options of who he can slot in with Max Verstappen going into the future. But I've got to say that right now, that seat number 2 is the hardest seat to fill in Formula One. It comes with the most pressure driving alongside Max Verstappen and being Max Verstappen's teammate. Obviously, he's one of the best drivers on the grid, but people even say it year after year, Red Bull is tailoring their car to drive for Max Verstappen. So as the driver number 2, you're pretty much having to drive Max Verstappen's setup every week. and having to figure that out and learn your way. And I'm not saying that they're not taking in feedback from the second driver. They clearly are, but they're more leaning on their driver number one, their hopes of winning the Formula One Drivers' Championship, and having the youngest champion ever is Max Verstappen. Everybody knows that. So I'm telling you, being Max Verstappen's teammate is one of the hardest things to do in Formula One. A lot of people want to try to claim being Lewis Hamilton's teammate is worse, but no, heck no. Being Max Verstappen's teammate comes with so much more pressure, having to match him in the car, match the times he's putting in, match the finishes he's putting in, but then also, like I said, having to learn how to drive his car, his setup, every single week. And we've seen it in the past with obviously Gasly struggling at the beginning, not being able to get it right. And like you said, they really didn't give him much time. Quickly move on to Alex Albon. Alex Albon pretty much has the exact same showing, if not worse, than Pierre Gasly. And so then they're like, well, okay, we're left holding our hand here. Who do we go to next? Sergio Perez, luckily for them, came on the free agent board, and they signed Sergio Perez. But now here we are, and it's been, Sergio Perez has kind of been hit or miss. One weekend, he's having an amazing weekend where he's pretty much passing everybody, getting the great finishing position. Then the next weekend, he's making a huge mistake, having to go possibly to the back of the grid and having to fight his way back through. And at times where Max Verstappen's qualifying in the top three, Sergio Perez is qualifying outside of the top six. And the big part here, getting out-qualified by Pierre Gasly in a car that is arguably slower and is not as good. So it's just really one of those things where even Pierre Gasly, and Pierre, I want to tip my hat to you and having the courage to be able to speak up this week and say, hey, look at what Sergio Perez is doing this year. Look at the results he's put in. Look at the results I've put in an inferior car. I belong back in that seat. I deserve another chance with the big team. And I think he's right. I do think he's right, man. This year, P4 has been his position. That has been his home. He has been qualifying P4. He has been finishing P4. His worst finishing position has been like P6 this year. He has always been up there fighting. Honestly, in Monza, he was up there in the sprint race fighting. If he didn't make that, there was such a small mistake there where he lost his wing off the back of the McLaren. If he hadn't done that and had to go to the back of the grid at Monza, I think we would have seen Pierre Gasly fight for another win at Monza and definitely finish, like I said, maybe P4 again, maybe even P5, P4, maybe even get on the podium again with the way that Grand Prix played out, with obviously Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton getting knocked out, with Max Verstappen crashing Lewis Hamilton out, as I say. But yeah, I got to say, Pierre Gasly, I think, has done a great job this year. I do think he deserves a chance back in Red Bull. And I think it's one of those things where if I'm Pierre Gasly and if Christian Horner decides to re-sign Sergio Perez even for 1 year, or if he decides to go with Alex Albon or a different route, that I say I'm ripping up my Red Bull contract immediately, looking to go to another team. And if I'm him, I'm potentially looking to go to maybe Aston Martin in the future with, obviously Sebastian Vettel getting a little older. I love Sebastian Vettel, but I think he's like Lewis Hamilton. I think maybe you got 3 or 4 years left in Formula One, and then he's probably going to retire and walk away, kind of like Kimi Räikkönen's deciding to retire. So I think Aston Martin could be a great team for Pierre Gasly to look in that will keep him to the front. And with their brand new factory that they're building, they clearly want to put their right foot forward to get themselves to the front of the grid. So I think that could be a good choice. Another great choice, obviously, he's a French driver, would be to go to the French team, Alpine, and then they would have an all-French lineup with Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. And honestly, that was a rumored lineup in the past to bring those two in together. And it obviously a French team, an all-French lineup, to be able to fight the all-British lineup that Mercedes is going to be fielding with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. So I think if I'm Pierre Gasly, if they do not promote me back to the Red Bull seat next year, well, guess what? I'm looking elsewhere, and I'll be happy to fight you, Christian Horner, going forward on the grid.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point, too, about you talked about some of the other teams who might have some aging drivers. If you are in the second Red Bull seat, as long as Verstappen is there, you're playing second fiddle. So you're never going to be the number one guy. And Verstappen's younger than Gasly, right? I mean, I think he's even a year younger than Gasly.
About a year, 1 year, yeah.
So, you're never going to be in that number one seat unless Verstappen, leaves, which wouldn't be a shocker either. I mean, anything with Verstappen is possible, but he is their guy. They have, you're not going to be ahead of him. So you might want to look at other options if you want to eventually be in the top spot on your team. And, you're never going to do that with Red Bull. It's going to have to be somebody else. Like you said, with an aging driver, you might want to buddy up with them. Even, this wouldn't happen, but let's say if Gasly signed with Mercedes, at least like Lewis Hamilton is probably another 2 years, then he's done, and then maybe it's your turn. Verstappen's the same age, like we said, a year younger than Gasly, so he's never going to be in that spot. So that's what Gasly has to kind of decide, even though it's awesome to drive in a Red Bull car, obviously. And then real quick, Rosamond Reese once again kind of chiming in and saying, he thinks Gasly's a better driver than Sergio Perez, but it's, whoever gets in that second car with Max struggles because, like you mentioned, Brandon, they have to get used to his car. So it's almost like you wonder, you got to kind of grade on a curve with that second driver in their first year with that car. And Perez, even though he hasn't been great, has probably been better than anybody else in that second car with Max Verstappen. So you have to kind of consider that too if you're Red Bull too, I think. Picking it up now with topic number 7, we're going to switch over to baseball. Brandon, do you want to add a little bit more to that F1 topic?
Well, Rosamond Reese is the man. I got to say that again. He keeps commenting there. Appreciate you for commenting in, Rosamond Reese. I've got to agree with him, that I think Gasly is the better driver than Perez and has the better upside being the young driver, and we can look to him longer. But I do agree with what you just said, where I think Sergio Perez has probably played second fiddle best to Max Verstappen than compared to how Albon did or Gasly did. So that brings in a tough question of, do you want to have him come back and do the same thing for Max Verstappen, or do you want to bring Gasly back? So I think it's a tough decision, but I think it's one that Christian Horner is going to have to decide here soon, because Pierre Gasly is also going to have plenty of options as well, because he has had such great form here and he is such a great driver.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of moving parts, as always, to F1. Folks, if you like this show, you're watching it right now on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. That's Comeback Sports on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, Comeback Sports. And then all the cut-ups that our awesome producer, Ben Kudo, puts together after the show, that'll all filter to your YouTube channel. You don't have to go search for it. It's just right there in your subscriptions.